there. This is video number 19. So we have, this is chapter 4, section 3, and it is solving a 2x2 system by elimination. And that's exactly what it sounds like. Our goal here is to eliminate either the x or the y variable by adding the equations together. Now, sometimes these problems are set up so that you can do that immediately. And here's what I mean by that. The first example that we're going to see is set up. So you have 3x plus 4y equals 2. And these are always written, write your equations on top of each other. It makes it easier to see what's happening sometimes. The other equation is x minus 4y equals 10. Okay, and so these, your goal, again, is to be able to eliminate by addition, which means the variable or the coefficient has to be exactly the same number with exactly the opposite sign, right? One needs to be positive, one needs to be negative, so that when you add down, they eliminate. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to add down and eliminate. So we're adding. Always, that's always going to happen. So you're going to add these down. So 3x plus 1x is 4x. Positive 4y minus a 4y, these eliminate and go away. We don't need them in our equation. And we're going to add these two down and we get a 12. And so then I'll show this step. Oops, my brain is thinking ahead. Okay, and just like we did with substitution, you're going to plug this back in and solve for y. You're going to, or x if you solve for y the first time, make sure that you plug into an original equation. So I'm going to take this guy. I'm going to go x minus 4y equals 10. Well, I know x is 3, so this guy's going to become 3. I'm going to move the 3 over. And I'm going to divide by negative 4. And y equals negative, get rid of that box, negative 7/4. So you might get some ugly little answers here when you do these. So, it could happen. You're probably going to be doing a worksheet. So if you do a worksheet, you're going to need to check these. Again, make sure if you need to check, if a check is required, you check into both equations. Because if these don't actually check, then you need to do some more work. So let's take the time to check these just so you see what they look like. When I check them, I'm going to put the equations next to each other just to make this easier. And then I have x minus 4y equals 10. Also, you're supposed to write your answer as a ordered pair, right? So our answer here is 3, negative 7/4. This is what I'm going to plug in. So my x is going to equal 3. my y is going to equal negative 7 over 4. Again, you have calculators to deal with the fractions, so don't worry about them, just deal with them. So this guy is going to be 3 minus 4 times minus 7/4 equals 10. If you need a calculator to do these, utilize one. 3 times 3 over here is 9. Here, your 4s would cross cancel, and that gives you a negative 7. And 2 equals 2, and that guy checks. And that's how you should do a check. Plug it in, do the work, show they equal each other. Over here, 3, the 4s would cancel. Negative times a negative is a positive. And 10 equals 10, and that one checks. Now, excuse me, if one of these did not check, the expectation here is that you go back and start over again. Don't just say it didn't work. Well, it didn't work because you probably made an error. These will all work. You might get, I try to stay away from giving you problems that have no solution or an infinite number of solutions. They can in these, but I really like for you to actually get an answer. So that's how that's going to work out. All right, so elimination. Let's go back up here. The green, your goal is to eliminate either the x or y variable by adding the equations together. Sometimes you can't do that right off the bat like you could here. So let's go to the next problem and we'll take a look at what happens when you cannot do that. So here's example number 2. And our equations are 2x plus y equals 1 and negative 9x plus 4y equals negative 13. So if you cannot just add down and eliminate, if you cannot eliminate, can I get rid of that box? Needs to go. I'm sorry. Sometimes these bother me a lot more than other times. Go away. Oh my gosh, it's doing stuff in the background, but it's not. There we go. Okay, if you cannot eliminate in step 1, you will multiply one or both equations by a number to make the coefficients equal. Have the same value. Remember though, we need opposite signs so that when we add down, they're going to disappear. Okay, so what you're looking at here, just pause that and finish that up and then come on back when you're ready. We want to look at the coefficients on the x's and the coefficients on the y's. Well, we have a 2 and a negative 9 on the x's, a 1 and a 4 on the y's. So your job is to decide, and you can do this any way you want. There's multiple things. You could make the x coefficients equal 18. You could multiply the top equation by 9 and the bottom one by 2. Or you could make your y's equal 4. This is what I'm going to do by multiplying the top equation by 4. But if I do that, I'll have a positive 4 on both, and I need one to be negative, so I might as well make this one negative so I don't have to multiply both of them. So going back to this note over here on the left-hand side, or the right-hand side, sorry, you're going to multiply equations together to make the coefficients have the same value, but with opposite signs. So those are the really important things here. And then when you multiply, just multiply out, show what you're going to get when you multiply. So here's what I mean by that. I'm going to take and distribute this negative 4 to all 3 parts of this. So I'm going to get negative 8x minus 4y equals negative 4. And then I'm just going to rewrite this second equation below it. Negative 9x plus 4y equals negative 13. And now you're going to add down. So I'm going to, let me get rid of the black. I'm going to eliminate the y's. I'm going to add down and get negative 17x equals negative 17. You divide both sides by negative 17. I shouldn't have to show this part. And x equals a positive 1. All right, well, now you're just going to plug back into either equation. I like the top one, so I'm going to go 2x plus y equals 1. I'm going to let the x equal 1, right? X is 1 right here, so I'm going to let this x equal 1. So I have 2 plus y equals 1. I move the 2, and I get y equals negative 1. And so my answer, ordered pair answer, looks like positive 1 for the x, negative 1 for the y, and that would be my answer. Okay, so this was a problem where you had to multiply one of the equations by something in order to make those things equal. Let's take a look at another one. This is example number 3. So this starts out as negative 10x minus 7y equals negative 19, and 6x plus 3y equals 3. All right, so again, let's highlight and take a look at my x's. I have negative 10 and 6 for my x's, so I need to either get those the same, or I have negative 7 and 3 for my y's. And so here's just a couple of statements. For the yellow, I could make these both equal 30 by multiplying the top equation by a negative 3. So top by negative 3. And I could multiply the bottom by a 5. Signs would already be, oh, I'm sorry, positive 3, not a negative 3. So that would give me a negative 30 and a positive 30. Or on the bottom, so check this out. I mean, you have multiple things that you could do here. The bottom equation, I could make both of those equal 21 by multiplying the top by 3 and the bottom by 7, right? And my signs are already opposite, so I would be set. So it doesn't really matter. And some of you might not even see the yellow 30. You might do this. Oops, I wanted that to be yellow. Boop, yellow. Some of you, those of you that are not quite so savvy with your math facts, might want to make the yellow equal 60, which you could do. Just multiply the top by 6 and the bottom by 10, right? So, I mean, none of these would be wrong. They would all be perfectly fine. So you just have to decide which way you want to go. What I'm going to do is pick this option right here. And so I'm going to multiply the top one by 3 and the bottom one by 5. And when I do that, again, I want to write these right over the top of each other. So make sure you distribute to all 3 parts of the equation. And I've already done this, so the math is all worked out. So I have negative 30x minus 21y. Negative 19 times 3 is negative 57. And then I'm going to do the second equation right here. 5 times 6x is 30x. 5 times 3y is 15y. And 5 times 3 is 15. So that's multiplying those guys. Now I'm going to add down. These will cancel out. Negative 21 plus 15 is negative 6. Negative 57 plus 15 is negative 42. And when I divide by negative 6 and divide by negative 6, I get y equals 7. All right, now you can pick which other equation you want to use. I like this one here because everything's positive in it. So I'm going to bring this down for my second solve. And I know y is 7, so I'm going to let this be 7. So 6x plus 3 times 7 equals 3. 6x plus 21 equals 3. I'm going to subtract off 21. 6x equals negative 18. And x equals negative 3. So again, ordered pair answer, negative 3, positive 7. That's your answer. Right? Without going and actually checking it. So this one required multiplication of both of the problems before you went any further. We need to do one more example because I don't want you to freak out when you see it in varsity. But the problem number 5 that I had looked like this. So this is example number 4. And this was 2/5 x plus 2/3 y equals -28. And 1/4 x plus 1/2 y equals -18. Now, I've talked about this before. I've encouraged this process. If you multiply an equation with fractions by the common denominator, you will eliminate the fractions. Okay? And if you don't know what that common denominator is, come and find out. Ask me or go search online how to find a common denominator. A lot of times it's the two values multiplied together. Like this first one, I have a 5 and a 3, so I need a number they both divide evenly into, and that's going to be a 15. Okay? The second equation, I have a 4 and a 2. Well, they'll both divide evenly into 4, so 4 is going to be the common denominator. So I try to divide the little one into the big one first. If that works, the big one is your common denominator. If it doesn't work, look for multiples of the bigger one and then go from there. So here's how this works. Again, we'll talk about it. So I'm going to divide the 5 into the 15. 15 divided by 5 is 3. And then 3 times 2. So I'm going to divide here and then multiply here. So divide 5 into 15 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6. So this whole term becomes 6x. Okay? This second term, 2/3. 3 goes into 15 5 times. 5 times the numerator of 2 is 10. So that's a plus 10y. And then don't forget to multiply the 15 times the 28, which is negative 420. Don't worry if these numbers get big. They do. It happens. And then here, we're going to divide. So 4 divided by 4 is 1. And then you're going to multiply that 1 times the numerator. 1 times 1 is 1. So that's just x. 2 goes into the 4 2 times. 2 times 1 is 2. And then 4 times 18 is negative 72. And now you have to decide if you're going to make your x's the same or if you're going to make your y's the same. And I think what I'm going to do here is just make my x's the same by multiplying this by negative 6. I don't have to multiply the top equation by anything. Okay, so I'm going to multiply the bottom one. So I'm going to get a negative 6x minus 12y and 72 times this one I didn't do. So 72 times 6, 12, 42, 43. Okay, it's 432 and a negative times a negative is a positive. So that's good. Bring down the other equations. So make sure you stack them on top of each other. And add down. So these will cancel each other. I get a negative 2y. 432 minus 420 is 12. And y equals negative 6. Okay. Now, remember that when you solve for the next part, you want to plug into an original equation. So I'm going to go into this guy because it's just a little simpler looking. So 1/4 x plus 1/2 y equals negative 18. And the reason you want to do this, by the way, is so if you made an error somewhere up above, that you don't use that error now. That's why we want to use the original equation. So y is negative 6. So this is negative 6. So 1/4 x plus 1/2 times -6 is -18. 1/4 x, a half of -6 is -3. And then I need some more space here. All right, I'm going to move the 3, add a 3 and add a 3. So I have 1/4 x equals -15. And remember, you can either divide them both by a quarter, or when you have a fraction, you can multiply by the reciprocal. And those would cancel. And x equals -60. And so your ordered pair here is x is -60, y is -6. And I actually went and checked that in Varsity to make sure it was correct, and it was. So don't worry, again, if you get these kind of big numbers. All right, so the reason we did this one was for this process, right? Multiply the equation by the common denominator. And if you couldn't follow what I did up in there, you can simply in your calculator go 15 times 2/5. It will tell you it's 6. Just don't forget to put the variable on. And then 15 times 2/3 would give you 10. 15 times 28 obviously is 720. Then you can do the same thing here. Calculator. 4 times 1/4 is going to give you 1. Don't forget the x. 4 times 1/2 is going to give you 2. Don't forget the y. And then 4 times -18. So if you couldn't follow what I did there, just use your calculator. But if you could, that's the easiest way to go about doing those. All right, so that's solving by elimination. This will come back as well when we see these again in the 3x3s and 4.6 and 4.7. All righty, so toodaloo.